I would ask my students is that, was this an investigation? No, was this an investigation?
Was this
What you just yeah, it's too late. Did you pass this? Did I pass it?
Yes.
It's this. It's an event or an observation. That's what you did. That's what you did just now. Okay? But that's what makes you curious. Your students wouldn't expect this to spin the way it did. So if we sometimes they need some help to get started. And teachers all over the world say, my students can't come up with their own questions.
大部分老师对这单词学生没有办法问出问题所以像刚刚他有讲到，很多老师就是直接给学生问题就好了。
I might give them the beginning of the question, such as, what would happen if I changed something to the way this moved? What would happen if I changed what? So, what are some things I could change about this? And then investigate how that change affected how it moved.
当然，就是我们担心没有办法自己问问题，所以我们老师还是要做一点点引导。那他刚刚的引导就是去问学生，如果我这上面做了任何一点改变，那这样子的它的转状况会不会改变？会不会因为我们做的任何的改变而产生了不同的结果？
So what could I change? The length of the wings. Yes. Sure.
Weight.
The way it's folded. Okay. The way it's folded. All right. Now these are all technology things. When you start changing the construction of it, right? And they're technology engineering types of investigations. So you can move right from the physics of this and how it's moving to also how does the construction affect the movement. So the way it's folded, the length, what else could I change? I could change the temperature in the room, okay? The air pressure in the room. So I can change not the twirly, but the environment. Okay, because it's not in a void, it is in a system. Very good. What else can I change?
The material, the piece of paper.
Exactly. So I can use something heavy, yeah, a cardboard. I could use something like this paper, which is heavier. I could make it out of some plastic. I could make it out of metal. I could make it out of a number of different things. Keeping the size the same and comparing how what it's made out of, the material it's made out of, affects the way it moves. What else can I change? There's a very obvious one. The size. I could make a big one. I could make a little one. And I could see how the size affected it, right? Yes. So, that's what you're going to do. question, what happens to the speed? Now, this has two directions of motion, right? It has a direction down, and it has a spin, a horizontal spin. So when you design the question, you have to be specific. I would do this in my physics class, and perhaps we would start looking at this horizontal spin, but that's more sophisticated content. It's easier to look at the speed as it drops.
那谈的是这个活动里面，你要观察，接着它做的一些变化。那当然，它这边准备的就是大小不同。那你要观察，到底要观察哪一个面向？一个是转这样的动的方向，跟掉下来的这个方向的动力所以可能要去引导学生去设计成更就是那个在观察的过程当中，你要去再引导清楚。
So here's the question now that's more specific. What happens to the downward speed of the little twirly? Okay, if you change the size. So we had the big one, and then a smaller one, and a smaller one, and a smaller one, and another small one, and a little baby one. So, you're going to answer this question in groups. And I have an envelope for groups of you. Okay, so maybe you 4 or 5, you can work in groups of 4 or 5
There's 20 people.
Huh?
20 people there. 20 people.
20 people, then we can have 5 groups of 4. Okay? And so here's a group. And let's see. There's a group, and maybe your group. I'll give one to you guys. So work together and answer the question. You get to design your investigation any way you want.
各位要去设计这个研究，那这个研究的大概问题就要引导，就是不同的大小它的调度跟手数。
Okay. So they have about 15 minutes to answer this.
15分钟的时间。
And if they need to use the restroom or something, they can do that while we're doing it.
那就是现在就是分组活动，如果你有需要喝茶。
Say, what is your answer? We talk more about what did you do? What was your design plan? Because that's as much my teaching objective as finding out the answer to the investigation.
他通常不会在总结的时候问说你答案是什么，而是问的是说你们刚才做了些什么。
And this is one of those very simple activities that you can start your students off with to get them to see that even though everybody's answering the same question, different groups can come up with different ways to solve the same problem.
OK， 他就是希望是在这样的活动之后呢，让学生知道每一个不同的组他们在设计这个探究活动的时候，他们会有不同的设计情形，所以他不在乎最后的答案。
And it's a way of starting your students thinking, even at the beginning of the school year, about how you're going to be approaching your design projects.
他通常会把这个活动放在一个学习的一开始，然后引导学生去思考。接下来我们的很多课程里面会教学生去设计一些东西，那让他们去思考他们接下来要做的事情。
So you were in my class. I would have each group stand up and talk about what they did to answer the question.
好，接着就是各组要派一个代表来说你刚刚做了些什么事情。
We don't have enough time for that today. Okay, but I noticed that some people had one person stand, like this group had somebody up on a chair, right, dropping it, right? So that was one of your design plans. Other groups had a group of people all had one, and then you all dropped it at the same time, right? And then some people had one person with two at a time. So even though you all had the same question to begin with, when we talk about the question, okay, you as a group, because of the way you thought, because of your background, because of your conversation with each other, came up with different plans.
我们针对同样的问题，可是每一组你们肯定有不同的背景，然后你们讨论的结果会让你们设计出各种不同的观察过程。
And then we would talk about how this is the way scientists and engineers work too. There's not necessarily one way, even though this group and that group and this group and that group may have done it differently. No one did anything wrong.
每一组它所产生的方式不同，但我们要强调的是，没有任何一组做的是错的。
So many times in our classroom, there's only one answer. There's only one way of doing it. And that doesn't allow the students to have that real life experience.
大部分我们以前的经验就是照着我们实验操作的课本照做，然後就同样的答案。那这样的活动让学生知道可以有不同的方法。
And because this is so simple, there isn't a lot of risk. The kids aren't afraid to approach this problem in the beginning.
这个活动呢，它一方面就很简单，那东西也很方便带，所以他们可以到处到各国去讲话，然后让学生也很容易就去使用，它不用很高的，不用很贵的仪器，它就可以操作。
Maybe afterwards I would say, so what did you find? And what did you find out? And what did you find out? And it could be, and very often, different groups have different answers because of the way they designed their investigation.
这种方式呢，其实一开始让学生可以有机会去发表他们的做法，让形成一个比较自由的一种气氛。那通常他也会尽量选那个很不一样的两组，然后分别去解释他们为什么。
So from a teaching, and then I can say, well, you found that the biggest one was the fastest. You found the smallest one was the fastest. Is someone wrong? No. It was because of the different ways that you decided to answer it.
那咱们会发现，就是其实有些组会结果是很迥然不同的。然后让他们说明之后呢，老师会去呈现的是没有任何一组是错的，是你们的设计是不同的，这样子提供给学生一种就是自由舒适的方式来参与这样的活动。
But you have to have the data to support your answer, regardless of what your answer is. It can't be just anything. You have to have the evidence to support your final conclusion.
但是虽然是这样子，组答案有可能不同，但重点它会要求每一组提出它的证据，所以必须要去搜集资料。那你在操作的过程当中，资料的分析，然后最后提出证据，这才是最终要求各组呈现的，不可能是随便讲讲的。
So when we do projects and we do investigations in science and technology and engineering, we always start off with a question. There's some problem or question to solve. And then there's a procedure. There's a way of solving the problem. And then you come up with some solution. It may be something that comes out of an experiment. It could be a design, it could be a model, but it's your solution. So there's, for every problem, there's always three parts. There's the question, there's the procedure, and there's the solution. In our classrooms, we need to teach our kids what a good question looks like, what a good procedure may be, and what a good solution would be. We need to teach that. But then we have to back off a little. And we have to give our students, but then we have to give our students the opportunity to come up with their own solutions. So in a level 1, yeah, I'll give everybody the question, and I may tell them, this is the way you solve it, but they don't know what it is. And then because of the way they analyze the data, they may come up with different solutions.
那说这张表格里面大致上把我们的科学探究的教学的内容呢分成就3个大的部分，一个就是问题，一个就是过程，然后最后就是找到答案。那个答案呢，不一定就是包含我们最后设计出来的模型，或是我们的设计的那个产物等等，都就是在这个项目上面的这3项。那老师当然知道最好的问题、最好的过程方法和最好的答案，但是事实上强调是能够多一点点让学生去探索的机会，所以它其实有不同的
And then you can give them the question, but then they come up with their own procedure and design, and they come up with their own solution. That's what you just did now. I gave you the question, but then each group decided how they were going to go about answering the question and what their solution would be.
在这个表上面很明显的，就如果说是到我们刚刚做的事情是第二层那当然最好的是第3，全部都是我们让学生自己看好。那刚才的问题他给了，但是过程到结果都是我们大家自己找出来的。
And then finally, you come up with your own questions to answer. You design your investigation, and then you come up with your own solutions.
那就是我刚刚提到的，就是 level 3，但是最终我们会引导学生，希望他们自己形成问题到方法过程还有最后的结果。
I could say to you now, every group, think of another way to change it. You choose. Do you want to make it out of different material? Do you want to make it folded differently? Do you want to make the wings longer? Every group, come up with your own question. Okay? Design your investigation and answer it. Could you do that? Sure. It's not hard. I could even send you home to do it at home, because it wouldn't take a lot of materials. It would be something they might have easily around the house. And they could all come back and say, this was my question. And this is how I answered it. And this is what my answer is. And it could be that Kevin comes back and said, well, I made it out of different materials, but I used plastic, heavy plastic, thin plastic. And Shane Yo might say, well, I made it out of different materials too, but I used fabric. And I found, and you might come up with very different answers depending upon what you did here.
在刚刚他就说这是一个开始的活动，那接着我们可以再继续下去，所以就可以让学生自由的去找他们自己有兴趣的问题，或是他们自己开始去设计然后到最后他可能带来的是一个完全不同的一个设计的产物。
And as a teacher, my students, once they come back and share what they did, would learn a lot about how this moved and what kinds of changes affected how it moved.
就刚刚提到，可以到回来到教室，大家各自拿着自己设计的产品然后就开始进一步的
by sharing what they're learning in separate investigations.
那这里面当然看似是有物理的概念为主，但事实上它跟我们的这个一些工程设计很有关系。
Too many times in our schools, especially in our schools, this last one is a big project. We're going to start in September, and in October I want to know what your question is, and in November, tell me what you're going to be using, right? And then maybe January. Oh well, wait, it's New Year's. We'll have to wait until March. We're going to have the big show. And they do this one time, and it's like the big project. But how do you learn how to do the big project if you've never done little ones on your own? It's not fair.
那其实我们很多那个专题研究，最后时间都是很长，那学生最后有一个最后有一个成果展。可是如果说我们没有适当的在一开始的时候引导学生怎么去做这件事情，那其实我们怎么可以期待学生马上就可以完成那样子的东西？
So this could be done in your class or at home, very simply. So you could do a few of these through the year. You don't do these every week. You don't do it all the time, but just scatter them through your curriculum to give the kids an opportunity to try it out in small ways.
也就是他们的设计大概就是一开始先一个像在课室里面小小的一个活动，先让学生去思考这个问题，之后那就给他一个就是一个专题，好，让他有足够的时间去完成。
So if you want to just show them the tube for 1 minute.
Okay.
Your lunchtime is now, right?
Okay.
Your lunchtime. What time is that?
2 minutes.
Yeah. We're going to show you something for you to think about
Over lunch.
over lunch.
Okay. So, I need you to make some observations of what I have in my hand. Just one observation each. I need a volunteer.
就是大家看观察一下，然后你有没有 day estimate？
Very analytical. Just one observation. Tell me something you can see.
Inside.
Okay, so he's already asking what's inside, which is interesting because this is curious, so he's asking a question already. But just on the outside, what you can see. Just say something.
只要说你看到的是
What? Bat. Oh, so he says like a baseball bat. Maybe that's Tom Arndt's problem. Okay, so it's a cylinder. Okay, and what do you see? Don't touch them. Okay, so she's talking about the ropes moving back and forth. Now that's not an observation. She's making an inference about something. So when you're teaching about observing and inferring, when students make an inference, when you ask them to make an observation, you point that out and you talk about it. When students make an observation, when you're asking for an inference, you point that out because you want your students to know the difference between an observation and an inference. They're both important, but they're different kinds of things. Okay, so an observation. Don't touch me.
但是活动要求大家就是观察而已，其实我们容易就直接跳入推论，这到底是什么？那 先让学生观察，用他的眼睛，用他的五官。No, just say what is observation?
So what do you see here? You can't see anything. Okay, so I helped him out there. There's a small hole, only one hole. Okay, what do you see on the other side?
Telescope.
Inference. He says 2 holes.
Okay, so there's 2 on this side, 1 on that side. Okay, very easy things. Okay, what do you notice? Music. Okay, but now it's a little bit of an inference now.
It's an inference.
About what it may do. It may make noise, but what's coming out of this tube? Looks like my hotel.
你看得到的。
Okay, you guys are just studying lunch. So we could get things like there are the ends of ropes. The ropes have knots. Someone might say there are 4 ropes, and I'd say that's an inference because you don't know how many ropes are here yet. You have to know what's inside. And then I would ask, if I pull this one, what do you think will happen? This one will get shorter? Okay. How many think something else will happen? She said this will get shorter if I pull this.
Some kind of musical instrument.
Okay, so let's see what happens. What if I pull this one? What will happen?
Magic.
No magic, this is magic. I pull this one now. Same silhouette? Okay. Now, watch. Watch. Okay, now, right now, everybody's thinking, trying to explain what went on, and the explanation is if you can figure out what's inside. So during lunch, think about what's inside, and then we'll continue with this after lunch. I'll do some more things, but draw a picture. You can do it by yourself, you can do it to other people. I think the way I started was this, and then I do that. Then I pull this, and then I did that. I think then I did this.
If you pull just half of the string.
Just pull half.
And the other side.
This one?
Yeah.
But this didn't. Okay, so time to have lunch and think about it.
我们就午餐开始，然后